So, my home country of Russia has just released an awful sitcom TV show about Joe Biden. What you're looking at right now is a new TV show called Goodbye, launched in October 2024 on a Russian TV channel TNT. And it's essentially Russian propaganda making its best attempt at trying to be funny. Now, if you follow what Russia is doing, you might have already seen a couple of these terrible Russian viral video propaganda advertisements. I've actually reacted to a couple of these on my channel before. For example, there was one where a Russian couple is leaving Russia, they're on a plane, they're flying from Russia to America, and on the plane they meet a bunch of caricatures of trans people, and there's a scene where the entire staff and everybody on the plane is forced to kneel in front of a black guy. Because of course, you know, they're trying to make fun of woke America or whatever. And this show about Biden is essentially what happens when you try to stretch out that kind of propaganda advertisements to 8 entire episodes. And as a Russian myself who loves reacting to Russian propaganda, I just have to review it. So what is up guys, it is your boy Roman, your favorite neighborhood Russian, and in today's video, I have tortured myself watching an entire season of this Z propaganda show, and I'm going to give you guys a thorough review. Now let's start this with a short backstory. One question you guys might have when you watch this footage is, who in God's name is this person that is playing Joe Biden? He looks absolutely insane, right? Well guys, this actor is actually quite a character himself. Joe Biden in the show is played by the Russian actor Dmitry Dyuzhev, who's actually kind of an old star of Russian TV. He's been in huge Russian movies and Russian TV shows at the end of the 90s and the noughts, and he's overall known in Russia to be kind of a dick and kind of a weirdo. He's had a huge fall off over the years, and honestly, he's probably the closest thing you would get to like a Russian John Travolta. Dmitry Dyuzhev, for example, has starred in a legendary Russian TV show about gangsters called Brigada. He was also a star in the famous Russian movie by Alexei Balabanov called Zhmurki, or Dead Man's Bluff, which is like a comedy about Russian 90s gangsters, kind of the Russian Pulp Fiction in a way. And if John Travolta fell off and got into Scientology and that kind of weird stuff, Dmitry Dyuzhev basically went insane and got into heavy drugs. So they both have crazy stories and they even look kind of similar, right? You guys might actually be familiar with this actor Dmitry Dyuzhev if you watched my channel before, because I already made a video where I reacted to this guy actually hosting a huge Russian Z propaganda concert. And during that concert, the guy looked absolutely insane and coked out of his mind.
Да я думал, тут люди, я не знаю, места себе не находят, не знают гармонии с миром и так далее. А я приехал в улыбающийся город. Да, нелегко. Да, непросто.
How's this, bro? I can't. And overall, Dyuzhev is just known to be not a very stable person. He's weird, and the way he acts and carries himself and the way he is as a person kind of falls almost into an uncanny valley of sorts, and makes anything he does so bad that it's actually good. And this is the reason why when the trailer for this show came out and it was first announced, everybody in Russia went absolutely insane and just freaked out, and everybody thought that this has the chance to be either the worst or the best thing ever made. And guys, what do I have to say? It is not the best thing ever made. The show Goodbye was aired on a Russian TV channel TNT, which has always been an entertainment and comedy channel that ran a lot of shows and sitcoms that were essentially adaptations of Western sitcoms. For example, when I was growing up, we had shows like Счастливы вместе, which was actually a Russian adaptation of the American sitcom Married with Children. We also had the legendary show Универ, or University, basically a show about the shenanigans of living in a dorm room with a bunch of friends, kind of actually inspired a lot by the show Friends. There was also Interny, a comedy sitcom show about young doctors, so it was heavily inspired by Doctor House and Scrubs. The main lead actor in that show is actually a little bit insane too. But that's a story for another day. And there were some other more original ones like Реальные пацаны, which was literally a sitcom about the life of gopniks in Russia. A lot of this stuff has not aged too well, but nevertheless, it is stuff that we in Russia grew up with and is something that is very familiar to all of us. But a lot of this stuff is really kind of the same though, and overall this kind of TNT comedy from this TV channel has pretty much kind of become a cliche in its own genre of cringe now. And the show Goodbye is essentially a perfect shit cocktail of this kind of crude Russian inspired by early noughts sort of American Pie-esque edgy comedy made by the channel TNT mixed in with a bit of sort of a Sacha Baron Cohen-esque The Dictator or Borat kind of comedy, right? Except it's just not good. So what is this show really about? To put it short, it's the adventures of Joe Biden in Russia. Basically, Joe Biden is mad and annoyed that the sanctions on Russia are not working and that the country has not crumbled yet. In order to understand what is going on, Biden flies to Russia under a fake identity to figure out why the sanctions are not working and Russia is doing so well. The US government sends 2 Secret Service agents to follow Biden and secretly watch over him in Russia. But what happens is that the agents lose track of Biden and end up accidentally abducting an old Russian man who looks exactly like the president, also played by Dmitry Duzhev, of course. The Russian Biden lookalike is taken back to the White House, while the real Joe Biden loses his passport and gets stuck in Russia, slowly getting used to the Russian way of life. Basically, in every single episode out of the 8 that came out, Joe Biden spends a new day in Russia and has a new plan to destroy Russia and its economy. At the same time, the fake Joe Biden that is actually a Russian grandpa is living in the White House, acting as the president of the United States and trying to sabotage the US from introducing any new sanctions and anti-Russia policies. Now, all of this happens in the first episode, by the way, and you guys might already have a ton of questions. For example, how does this even make any sense whatsoever? Well, very conveniently, according to the plot, the real Joe Biden actually learned Russian during the Cold War, so he can actually speak Russian in his show. I guess they probably just did it so that Dmitry Duzhev doesn't actually have to speak English because he can't. And meanwhile, the Russian grandpa version of Joe Biden, the fake Joe Biden, can also speak perfect English because he turns out to be some kind of actor who as a young man was meant to star in a British film or something like that.
In 79, I was supposed to star in a British film.
Чего?
A Soviet regular guy starring in a British film in the time of the Iron Curtain. Yes guys, this stuff makes a lot of sense. I advise you guys to not really look into this stuff too deep because it is an extremely dumb show. And overall, the entire show definitely feels like it was rushed and kind of made in a hurry because they were trying to fit in with the current political trends, you know, to be relevant within the realm of the US politics and what is happening right now. And they kind of even failed at that because the show came out as everybody kind of started forgetting about Biden and as he dropped out of the presidential race and was replaced by Kamala Harris. So, huge L right there. But the show essentially is obviously supposed to be a satire of the United States. The main gag and the main joke of this entire sitcom is essentially just making fun of Joe Biden, showing him as a slow, stupid, dim-witted, and basically senile person. This is precisely why the lead actor looks so fucking weird. He constantly does this creepy ass face that looks like he's about to either bust or shit himself. And it's basically Dmitry Duzhev acting and trying his hardest to make a sort of a Biden gaffe or a Biden brain freeze face. And again, because Biden is played by Dmitry Duzhev, it is really a level of terrifying and uncanny that few other actors are able to achieve. So, all things aside, right, the casting for the show, especially for the role of Biden, is actually kind of genius. Because it saves the show by making it so bad that it's actually kind of interesting to watch. Now here's something I gotta say, I'm not offended at, making fun of Biden or making fun of the USA. In fact, I'm all for it. If the satire itself is good. However, guys, it's just not good. I mean, they go way too overboard with it in the show. The way they try to portray Biden is as if he's barely sentient and actually brain dead. I mean, they're just constantly hammering it in your face, like every 30 seconds or so, essentially saying, look guys, Biden is stupid and senile, get it? Biden is slow. Remember? Look. He's dumb as hell, isn't that just so funny? And honestly, him being a dumbass on a show is not even funny to look at, it just becomes annoying. And you kinda want him to get fucking going already and stop being stupid and stop telling the story, right? And look, Biden is slow and stupid is a good joke and so on, right? But it's not a good when it's literally the only joke you have for the entire show and you're stretching it out to 8 episodes. Okay, so this show kinda sucks and I usually don't like videos where people just go and recap the entire story of the show and add nothing to it, so I'm not gonna do that, but I will briefly go over the overarching storyline of these 8 episodes, but I mainly want to focus on certain moments of the show where the Russian propaganda Z message really seeps through. So, I mean, this entire show essentially is just propaganda, let's not forget that. So, episode 1, let's get into it. The first episode of the show starts with Joe Biden sitting in the White House watching Russia Today in Russian for some reason. Biden talks to his staff who also repeat all the propaganda talking points and basically say that Russia is essentially doing super well and that the US sanctions have been completely useless. Biden is baffled at all of this, saying that the US has been trying to destroy Russia's economy for 30 years now and still has not succeeded. Yes, very true, very real historical fact, by the way. All those loans that the US gave to Russia in the 90s, that never happens. Yes, they've been trying to destroy Russia ever since it became a sovereign country. And a lot of this show is about subtle things like this, where they all come together to create this perfect ultimate Z propaganda narrative, where Russia essentially is just this wholesome, innocent country that is standing proud on its own, and pesky liberal evil USA is trying to destroy and backstab it no matter what. And the US is just simply mad that Russia is so successful. And there is gonna be way more where that came from in this show. Oh, and of course the show just has to start with like an awful anti-woke joke that really sets the tone, you know what I'm saying?
Красиво выглядите, мистер Морган. Новый пол вам идет.
Yeah, guys, you get it? Haha, trans, lol, it's funny. I mean, look, when I told you guys this entire show was essentially a terrible Russian propaganda video stretched out to an entire season, I really was not kidding. It really is just that. Oh, and right after, there's also a line in which Biden suggests that the black guy next to him is like, not really black, but trans black or something, which, you know, just doesn't make any sense.
Господин президент, не волнуйтесь, у нас есть план. Возьмите свой план и засуньте его в свою черную, а до этого белую задницу.
I mean, look guys, I'm not gonna focus on stuff like this as much any further, but I just wanted to show this in particular because these two jokes happened in the first 2 minutes of the show, okay? I'm not gonna focus on every instance of this in the show because it would be just too much, and this video would be like an hour long, so... But anyway, I'm sure you guys get it at this point, right? This is, you know, peak Z humor. Just racism and making fun of minorities. Hilarious, dudes. So, Joe Biden gets a fake Russian passport and identity and sets on his way to Russia, not wanting to be accompanied by anyone. However, the Secret Service sends 2 agents to follow him in... However, the Secret Service sends 2 agents to follow him in... Да блять! However, the Secret Service sends 2 agents to follow him in... Да блять! However, the Secret Service sends 2 agents to follow him anyway. Нормально. And these agents are, of course, portrayed to be the dumbest motherfuckers in the world. Stupid Americans, of course. And in the next scene, we see that Joe Biden is flying to Russia through Istanbul with a layover because, due to the sanctions on Russia after 2022, after the start of the war in Ukraine, there are no longer any direct flights between the West and Russia, basically. So they're making Biden feel the consequences of his own actions, right? And it's in this scene where Biden meets the supporting lead of the show, a regular Russian guy named Alexei. Alexei airs out his annoyances at Biden, because due to sanctions against Russia, Russian airplanes haven't been getting spare parts and are often breaking down. This is also something that's gonna happen a lot in this show. A lot of Russians are like blaming the mundane inconveniences of their life on Biden, essentially, and the United States. Which I guess is kind of like a self-aware ironic thing about how Russians always blame the West for all of their problems while at the same time ignoring what their own government does. And I guess the show wants to make a point that the sanctions have affected, you know, normal, regular Russians. But I do think that it's just unintentionally funny, because in this show, just like in real life, a lot of Russians have like zero understanding of cause and effect. Because they cannot put 2 and 2 together and figure out that the reason why, you know, your planes are not working is not because of Biden, but also because, you know, your country might have started a war, but who cares about that, right? Oh, and check it out guys, by the way, Biden is holding a book in his hands, which is actually the novel Idiot by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Because he's an idiot, guys. Get it? He's a stupid idiot, guys. It's funny. This show is really funny. So the plane lands and Biden asks the Russian guy what's a good place to visit in Russia. And Alexei suggests that Biden should not go to Moscow, but instead must visit his hometown of Lobnya in the Moscow region to see the real Russia. Moscow in the Moscow region is not real Russia, by the way, I'm telling you as a real Russian, just a little side note. When arriving in Russia, the US Secret Service guys get held up at the border and additionally checked, which makes them lose sight of Biden. The 2 agents leave the airport security looking like they have been assaulted, limping and holding their butts and so on. Which I guess of course implies that they've had their butts, you know, violated and checked by Russian border security, so again guys, very funny Z Russian humor once again, rape is funny. especially because it actually happens in real life with Russian cops. Hell yeah, dudes. The Russian, Alexei, takes Biden to his hometown and tells him to check in a hotel, leaving him alone. In the hotel lobby, Biden is once again being senile and stupid, is not able to do anything by himself, and eventually just falls unconscious outside next to the entrance. The hotel lobby lady tries to resuscitate him by going mouth to mouth, and Biden wakes up. But the two are interrupted by Alexei, who is suddenly back. It turns out that the hotel lady is actually Alexei's girlfriend, and her name is Natasha. Alexei and Natasha immediately get into an argument, and Alexei accuses her of trying to cheat on him with old man Biden. Yes, guys, I don't know. The scene is just awful, and their accent sucks, and it just makes zero sense. It's not believable in the slightest. And I have great news, guys, because these two, Alexei and Natasha, are kind of the main characters of this entire show, and half the show actually focuses on them instead of Joe Biden. These two characters basically kind of follow the trope of classic TNT TV channel shows. It's sort of a goofy, quirky couple that fights all the time or whatever. I mean, I came into the show to watch Joe Biden, played by Duzhev, go crazy, right? I didn't come here to watch some normie couple I don't give a shit about. And honestly, guys, I hated these two characters right from the get-go, because they're basically kind of a carbon copy of the characters of Sasha and Tanya from the TV show Univer from the same channel, except that the actors in the show Goodbye are not even in the slightest bit likable or like good. And yeah, they do take a lot of time up in this show, and I'm guessing, you know, the writers just figured out that stretching one entire joke, you know, Biden is dumb and stupid, to 8 episodes might just be too much, so they decided to add these, you know, extra side characters to fill up the space and airtime, which is once again, just not good. Anyway, while the two argue and Biden is out of his elements, we are introduced to Biden's Russian double, an old man named Ivan, who happens to be at the same location at the same time as the real Joe. Ivan is supposed to be a failed actor who knows English, which is once again very convenient for the plot. And what happens is that the Secret Service agents come to the last known track location of the president's and abduct the fake Biden instead of the real one to take him back to the United States. Now, why are they taking him back to the United States even though they agreed to him going to Russia and he hasn't been in Russia even for an entire day yet? I do not know, man. I do not know. The show is ass. Ivan, the Russian grandpa, is actually fine with all of this, and he sees this situation as an opportunity to start a new life for himself and stop being just another poor failed pensioner in Russia. The Russian guy Alexei for some reason decides that he's not going to let Biden stay at the hotel and instead invites him to his home. The two get drunk on vodka and bond, talk about life and so on, and eventually Biden helps Alexei apologize to his girlfriend and make things up. Alexei stays the night at Natasha's place and gives Biden the key to his apartment. But the poor old Joe, of course, is too dumb and too demented to figure out what the apartment actually is and which building it actually is, so he just ends up sleeping outside like a bum. And it turns out that he's also lost his passport and apparently can no longer come back to the United States of America. And that is pretty much where the first episode ends. Cue the titles. Matushka Zemlya. Yes, by the way, guys, the title and the credits song for this show is an awful Z propaganda song called Mother Earth, which is a terrible patriotic song that sings about like love and Mother Rus or whatever. I actually made a video about it a while back. I fucking hate that song with a burning passion. And the song is in the show and in the credits of it, so I guess not only is this the worst show ever made, but it also features some of the worst music ever made. Very nice. And by the way, yes, since Alexei just gives the key from his apartment to Biden, Joe Biden, the president of the United States, just simply starts living in Alexei's home. Why? I don't know. If you guys are wondering if there's ever a lore reason or if it's ever explained why this Russian guy is letting some random American weirdo he just met stay in his house rent-free and live in his place, no guys, there is no explanation. So that is pretty much the first episode, and I wanted to pay extra attention to it and describe it because it kinda sets the tone and the story for the whole series. And I just want you guys to feel as disappointed and frustrated as I was watching this bullshit. It is truly awful and it is really done in the most poor taste imaginable. It is pure distilled TNT TV channel slop, and it robs you of your time and your soul. Do not watch it. Alright guys, let's get to the second episode. Episode 2 is a little better, honestly. We learn that Alexei works at a public school as a PE teacher, and Joe spends the first half of the episode looking for his passport and trying to make some money to come back to the United States. In order to try to restore Biden's passport, Alexei takes him to what we in Russia call a multifunctional center, or an NFKRZ, which is essentially a place that processes citizens' requests and issues out governmental documents and so on. And Joe Biden ends up being given the passport for the name of Ivan, his Russian lookalike. With his new passport, Joe applies for a job as a security guard at this exact data center, hoping that he could have a chance at destroying the personal data of Russian citizens by hacking into the system. Ultimately, he fails, gets spotted, and is fired from the data processing center. Also, the scene where he gets fired is just not great.
Марин, ну при приеме на работу как надо внимательнее быть. Не президента же Америки выбираем.
What? Nobody in Russia would ever say this in any occasion. This is not a fucking saying. Nobody would ever say that. And this right here is just kind of the essence of this entire show, right? It is a dogshit slop sitcom that actually has no political commentary or satire, and instead is just a generic TNT TV channel show where they try to phone in a political joke all the time in places where it just doesn't fit. In places that don't even make sense. Anyway, after getting fired, Biden is still desperate for money, so being the evil, greedy Yankee capitalist that he is, he decides to steal some cash from the simple, hard-working Russian people. He pays a visit to Alexei's neighbor, a Russian elderly lady. Initially, Biden tries to act as if he has romantic interest, but the babushka does not care. Joe knocks on her door once again and says that he would like to hear the grandma's opinion on America. This idea actually excites the babushka, so she lets him in and starts essentially telling him all the truth about the United States of America.
Вот в вашей Америке, например, деньги на выборы корпорации дают. И те, за кого башляют, должны лоббировать их интересы.
Простите, где здесь туалет?
Да-да, вот там по коридору. А потом я расскажу про Deep State. Там вообще такое дурилово.
I mean, look, okay, I guess the joke here is obviously that Russian grandmas, Russian babushkas, they know everything about the United States politics and so on, and know nothing about what Russia is doing and what's happening in Russia. All thanks to the power of Russian propaganda and TV, obviously, and cool, I guess, but I just can't fucking take it, man. Like, Russian babushkas talking about the deep state or whatever, and lobbying, like... What the fuck is this, man? Once again, it's just not something that the Russian babushkas are aware of and talk about, okay? Like, this garbage really is just one big Russian propaganda ad that is phoned in inside of a TV show. Anyway, Biden looks around the babushka's apartment, finds some cash, and steals it. Afterwards, Biden meets with Alexei, who asks him for help. It turns out that the school where Alexei works in is in dire need of an English teacher, and Biden gets the teacher job due to being a native speaker of English. Anyway, the absolute worst scene of this episode is at the end, where Biden actually arrives to the American embassy and talks to an American consul.
А по мне что, не видно?
Я тоже американец, и мне нужна помощь.
Ты американец? Ты не похож на американца. Ты даже не черный. Может, ты хотя бы гей?
Нет.
Тогда какой ты американец? Наша страна не так строилась.
Haha, yeah guys, so funny. So funny, it's hilarious. You guys get it yet? America is woke? Gay and black, guys. Haha, everybody in America is gay or black. God, I wanna fucking kill myself. Anyway, this extremely annoying caricature American working at the embassy does not help Biden in any way, because it turns out that Joe's Russian lookalike Ivan has already arrived in the US and is already acting as president. And the embassy clerk essentially thinks that the real Biden is actually fake. So I guess the US presidential staff is just too dumb to notice that the person who returned from Russia is clearly a different person with like a ridiculous Russian accent and everything. And things are just continuing as normal and he's gonna be the president. It is kind of funny though that this has actually happened in Russia before, when in the 17th century we had like 3 or 4 different imposters that were pretending to be the Tsarevich of Russia, the son of Ivan the Terrible, who died. And these imposters were pretending to be Tsarevich Dmitri in order to become the Tsar of Russia. And some of them actually ruled. You guys just look up false Dmitri. So yeah, that actually happened in Russian history, but you know, these stupid Americans, am I right? We in Russia had Lже Dmitri, now you guys in the US have Lže Biden. How about that? So yeah, that's basically it for the 2 first episodes. It kind of feels like one pilot. It's basically the setup for the entire show and the entire storyline. And not much changes from here on out. In every episode from here on, we see the real Joe trying to come up with a new way to destroy Russia. There are some more stupid shenanigans between the Russian couple, and by the 3rd episode we are finally shown what the fake Russian Biden is doing in the White House. And the first thing that actually happens in the third episode is that the new fake Russian Biden in the White House announces that in order to pay off the US national debt, he's going to be putting up Alaska up for auction.
Аляску! Вы представляете? Вы слышали? Аляска снова будет нашей.
То есть премия в этом году не ждать, да?
Почему?
Аляску будем скидывать.
Once again, classic hilarious Z Russian humor, essentially appealing to the feeling of this sort of imperial insecurity of Russian people and how, you know, Alaska is gonna be ours once again or whatever. Fuck off. Hilarious, once again, I'm pissing my pants. Anyway, this episode is mostly focused on Biden's adventures as a teacher in Russian school. Biden finds out that a major Russian governmental official is supposed to give the school a visit today, and Joe tries to come up with a way to steal this official's phone in order to reach out to the Russian government to let them know that he's the real Biden. And there's also a very interesting scene here where Biden is essentially coming up with a plan how to get this official, and what he does is that he plans to steal some kind of anesthetic gas from a hospital, then get back to the school while the government official is still there, wait until everybody gathers in one room to see a school concert, and then gas the inside of that room in order to make everybody fall asleep so that he can come in and take the official's phone and, you know, get the contacts that he needs. Now here's the thing, guys, I really don't know why they wrote this scene, because for Russians, I don't think it really invokes any good memories. I don't know if you guys are history buffs or not, but in 2002, we kinda had a horrible hostage crisis in Russia where a bunch of terrorists seized a crowded theater in Russia, the Dubrovka theater in Moscow in particular, and seized about 900 hostages. And if you know a thing or two about modern Russian history, you might know that the Russian special forces decided to try to take care of the situation by trying to make everybody in the theater, including the terrorists, simply fall asleep. And what they did is that they put a shit ton of fentanyl inside the ventilation of this theater, and they essentially ended up killing like 140 people or something. And it is pretty much precisely what the character of Joe Biden does in the scene. I mean, I don't know, guys. Did the writers of the show hear about this little event? Why the fuck did they write this in, okay? I mean, in my opinion, it is just fucking insane. This is like if the United States made a TV show in which Vladimir Putin, like, recreates 9/11 by flying a stunt plane into some kind of high-rise building, right? It's like...
9/11.
What is this? Why would you write this? And also the fact that this entire thing takes place at a school, which once again doesn't invoke good memories for Russians, because Russia also had a devastating school siege in its recent history, the Beslan school siege. I don't know, guys. I don't know if this scene is really a good look. I don't know if they should have written this. And I'm actually genuinely surprised that the creators of this show haven't gotten cancelled for this yet or something, because this is just insane. And maybe they have it coming to them though, because in Russia, for example, if you make a joke about the siege of Leningrad, you can actually go to jail and you're like considered a terrible person and a fascist or whatever. But this is somehow okay. And I honestly don't see how this is much different from making fun of the siege of Leningrad, right? It's like, what the fuck, man? Ладно, хоть они песню Хованского не вставили поверх этой сцены. Пиздец. Это просто пиздец. Okay, guys, let's get back to it. Long story short, Biden's plan fails once again and he gets nothing done, and the governmental official just leaves the school before Joe has a chance to see him. At the same time, we're shown that the fake Russian Joe Biden is having the time of his life in the White House. And there's even a scene where, you know, this Russian grandpa Joe Biden is having sex with Jill Biden in the White House. Yes, guys, this is also a real scene in the show. Absolute cinema. Absolute cinema. I'm fucking tired, y'all. Let's move on. In episode 4, Biden joins Alexei for a trip to the countryside, visiting his neighbor's dacha, a type of summer garden house located in the countryside, common in post-Soviet countries. The whole bit in this episode is essentially that Joe Biden is amazed at the fact that Russians love gardening and actually grow their own food on their property. So he tries to get the elderly people of Russia to party more and, you know, just hang out instead of working on their garden and growing stuff, to sort of hoping that Russia starts starving because, you know, everybody just stops growing their food or whatever. Anyway, this episode is also filler as hell. The only notable thing that actually happens here is there's a scene where the fake Russian Biden in the US is actually having a meeting with the governor of California regarding seizing Russian assets in the state or whatever. Ivan, the fake Biden, of course, is a real Russian patriot, наш слон, So of course he's trying to sabotage the US from acting against Russia. In order to do this, he just gets the governor drunk on a bunch of Russian vodka and simply just makes him forget about needing to sanction Russia or whatever by getting him drunk. Ah, of course, yes, the classic Russian soul. Russia, vodka, balalaika, matryoshka. Russian vodka saves the day. I don't know, guys. This show is almost like more of an insult to Russia than it is to America, to be quite honest. Episode 5 is where they really drop the ball. It kinda really feels like not only I, but also the creators of the show kinda have just stopped giving a fuck by this point, like nobody's gonna watch up until episode 5. This entire episode basically takes place at a sanatorium, a kind of a health resort for the elderly common in the Soviet Union. And the plot basically revolves around Biden chasing around some guy that he thinks is an important government diplomat, because the guy gets called a diplomat by one of the sanatorium workers. Biden is running after this guy for the whole episode, thinking that he might have some secret documents or something in his briefcase. Or something like that. I mean, once again, the story just makes zero sense, and they really just stop giving a fuck here, you know? At the end of the episode, Biden finally catches the guy and looks through his stuff, finding out that he has nothing of value in his briefcase. It turns out that this government guy he was chasing all day long was just some random idiots. And the only reason why he was named a diplomat by the workers of the sanatorium is because he just carries around a briefcase. And there's also a scene in this episode where Joe Biden gets a colonoscopy, and I guess this scene once again just really shows how the show was written. The screenwriters basically gathered in a room in a meeting. Imagine if Biden got his ass molested in the sanatorium by hospital workers. And after like 40 minutes of just dying laughing, somebody finally asked the question, but why? In what context would that happen? How do we make it so that Biden gets his ass wrecked? I don't know, bruh, just put his ass in the sanatorium or something, like who gives a fuck, right? Nobody's watching this shit anyway. Let's make up some bullshit that he's following some diplomat or something. I mean, this is exactly how the writing for the show went down, and you cannot convince me otherwise. What they did is that they came up with like 3 funny scenarios that they thought were funny, because the writers are mentally 12 years old, and what they did is that they wrote around an entire season of a show around those 3 funny scenarios that mostly involve like making fun of minorities, racism, or jokes about anal rape. And there you go, the show's ready. I mean, that's basically what happens. Great series. Oh yeah, and of course, most of this episode is like the scenes involving this Russian couple, you know, the quirky relationship shenanigans or whatever. I mean, I'll be honest, I just could not care less. No thanks. Okay guys, episode 6. Now I'm assuming you guys probably more or less understand the way the show works now. This time around, Joe Biden is trying to destroy Russia by hacking the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And once again, long story short, he fails because he's dumb and senile, America sucks, and Russia is the greatest. And once again, they have a dumbass scene here which they wrote the entire episode around. This episode for a change is focused on transphobia.
6 или 5 полов напридумывали. Трансформеры, Я не понимаю даже, что это такое.
Something that we haven't seen at all in previous episodes, so it's very original. Essentially, there is a scene where the fake Russian Joe Biden that is acting as the president has to meet the US Olympic team of female synchronized swimmers. And of course, guys, you can probably already tell where this is going. When he meets the team, one of the women on the team is a massive bearded guy. Which of course is a very thinly veiled, layered, deep satire on, you know, how woke the West has gotten and everything, and it is unfortunate that only few of us intellectuals will actually understand what joke they're making here. And it's great observational comedy too, totally not something your 50-year-old Z uncle would come up with. Great job, writers, you keep breaking new grounds in every single episode. This is comedy, guys, remember, it is really, really funny. Episode 7 is more or less innocent compared to the previous ones, to be honest. This one is mainly focused on the topic of how Russians renovate their homes and do their chores. Alexei asks Biden to help him out with renovating the apartment, and stupid Biden once again deludes himself into thinking that he's revealing some kind of Russian governmental secret or whatever. And the whole bit here is basically that Russians apparently are using old paper and even old secret Soviet plans and documents to insulate the walls of their house when doing renovations. Biden thinks that he's onto something and finds what he thinks is a plan of a Soviet rocket, but it simply turns out to be a draft design for a Soviet moonshine machine. And then Biden just gets drunk some more with Russian guys, of course, Russians and drinking. So yeah, once again, pretty stupid, but this is one of the more harmless episodes, I'd say. So whatever, it's a nice little filler. And now guys, we're finally coming into the end of the rows. Episode 8, the last episode in the season, the grand finale, which obviously means that they have to go out with a bang. You know, this is Breaking Bad, this is Better Call Saul. No, it's not, it's a dog shit TNT show. But no, it really does feel like this is one of the episodes where they actually tried once again to make it a little more, at least, engaging and fun, right? Now, most of this episode actually revolves around the wedding of Alexei and Natasha, the Russian couple. And Joe Biden, of course, is going to be a guest at this wedding and almost like a best man of sorts. And once again, guys, all of this is just very in line with Russian culture. I mean, we Russians, we just really love inviting weird-ass people that we met a week ago to our weddings. Yes, and we love it almost as much as we love letting old creeps from America that we'd never met before live in our apartment rent-free for months. Yes, so we Russians love doing it. It's just the, it is just the way of the mysterious and simple, generous Russian soul, my comrades. So yes, Biden takes part in Alexei's wedding and all the shenanigans that a Russian wedding entails. Now, while you Western viewers might think that this is an original idea, sort of putting an American guy in the middle of all this Russian chaos, in reality, this entire episode is just a bad copy of the blockbuster Russian comedy film from 2013 called Gorka. It is a movie that became a national hit in Russia, and it actually came from under the wing of a bunch of TNT producers, so from the same TV channel as this show. And the movie is kind of what you might expect. It's a sort of a over-the-top slapstick comedy making fun of the way Russian weddings go, exploiting stereotypes about gopniks, alcoholism, you know, Russian family traditions and so on. It is pretty much kind of like The Hangover, except it takes place at a Soviet wedding, right? And this episode is basically just the same. All of the cliches are basically here. You have an awkward wedding ceremony, drunk middle-aged women dancing, a montage of stupid wedding contests and games, tons of shots of people drinking vodka, all set to terrible Russian pop music. I mean, yeah, this episode is pretty much just a copy of that Russian wedding movie Gorka, which is already hated by a ton of people for just being a loud equals funny, vodka equals funny kind of a movie, right? And this is just more where that came from, so if you hate that movie, you will hate this too. And I do. And while all of that very original Russian wedding stuff is going on, the Americans over at the White House finally realized that the president has been an imposter this entire time. The White House people round the fake Russian Biden up and interrogate him, thinking that he might be a spy that was sent by Russia. They threaten him, but the fake Biden manages to negotiate his way out of the situation by saying that he knows where the real Biden is and that he could help with finding him. This doesn't make much sense to me either, as both of these Bidens have never met each other or seen each other in this show at all, and the fake Russian Biden really has no idea where the real Biden is, but I guess he just lied. Or maybe the writers were just like, we need to figure out how to end this show somehow. Who cares about the plot? Nobody on earth is gonna watch all 8 episodes anyway. And at the same time, back in Russia at the wedding, the real Joe Biden notices that Alexei and Natasha have been gifted a bunch of money by the wedding guests, and decides that this is his chance to finally get the money needed to come back to the United States of America. So of course, he decides to steal some of it. However, very predictably, he's a complete idiot in this show, so he just fails once again and ends up being caught red-handed in 4K by Alexei. So essentially, the American has now been caught in the act of, you know, their usual tomfoolery. From here on out, this entire episode basically turns into some insane Russian propaganda spiel about how America is this awful country that is constantly trying to backstab and destroy Russia, and how Americans are just backstabbing assholes that love to exploit the wholesome, kind-hearted Russians, right? Americans just love exploiting Russians for their naivety and kindness. I mean, guys, check this out, for example.
Я тебя в квартиру пустил. Я тебя за друга считал. Я тебе душу открыл, а ты... Американец, одно слово.
Yeah, exactly, my guy. Preach. Facts. But no, I mean, you are asking the right questions though here. Why exactly did you let this guy inside of your house, thought he was a friend of yours, fed him, and, you know, let him fuck your wife or whatever? Why did you do that? Is the issue here not that you're a complete drunkard moron that, you know, has like no boundaries and no brain? No, of course, because Alexei is just a simple Russian guy with, you know, such a generous, simple Russian soul. And you know, he's been nothing but a friendly Russian Ivan this entire time. It is all these Americans, these lying, treacherous, and cheating capitalist Yankee bastards. These Americans, man, simply liars and deceivers. Only Americans lie and take advantage of people, of course, we've all known and established that. And we all know, of course, that Russians are just simply built different. They're not capable of being bad people, of course. Just like they're not capable of being Nazis, right? You know what I'm saying here? And this dumbass narrative continues into the next scene here, where Alexei is talking to Biden and is kind of laying out and airing out all of the frustrations that Russian people have with the West and with America on him. And it's unironically like a really sad and self-exposing scene, and it might be the most important scene in this entire show actually, so let me break it down to you guys a little bit. Let's see what is really going on here.
Вот ты мне скажи, американец, что вам от нас надо? Что вы к нам все время лезете?
Потому что вы не хотите жить цивилизованно.
Да кто вам дал право решать, кому как жить? Кто?
Okay, so this is essentially Z Vatnik Putin supporter logic at full display here. This is genuinely what a lot of people in Russia believe because of propaganda. That Russia is this like wholesome country that has never done anything bad in its history, and America just keeps poking their nose in our business and will not leave us alone. Russia is just simply a sovereign and proud country that is standing on its own, and America, they just keep trying to invade us and they keep telling us how to live. They have the goal to tell us how to run things. And it's not like Russia is currently, invading another country and actively trying to take over another country because they think that they can impose their way of thinking on other people and tell other people how to live their life and how to run things in their country, right? No, guys, that's just a bunch of liberal, woke nonsense. Russia has never done anything wrong. It's just America that is trying to ruin things constantly for us. And Barack Obama just keeps taking shits on my apartment building commie block staircase. When is it gonna end?
Вы вот в кино нас все время злодеями показываете. Или идиотами каким-то в лучшем случае. А мы вам что сделали? У меня дома плакат со Шварцем все детство висел на стенке. Джинсы эти, кока-колы, жвачки, кепка это USA, Калифорния. American Boy еду с тобой. Мы думали, все, мир, дружба, жвачка, Голливуд, а вы что?
Boy, this is just sad, isn't it? I mean, once again, guys, innocent, wholesome Russia has been backstabbed by terrible America and evil. And we've never done anything but good for them. I mean, yeah, this scene basically pretty much captures the overall mindset of a lot of Russians pretty well, in my opinion. Especially sums up the mindset of your average Z Russian patriot who loves Putin. They say that they hate the West and their degenerate way of life, and yet these same people, just like most Russians, have always idolized the West and their way of life, and they've always idolized Western tech, Western things, and Western art. I mean, look, Russians have always idolized BMW, Schwarzenegger, Quentin Tarantino, Leonardo DiCaprio, Coca-Cola, Bosch, whatever, you know what I'm saying, right? The list can go on and on and on and on. These people long so hard to be a part of the West and to have the respect of the West, and yet at the same time they cannot get over themselves and their victim complex and realize that there are real reasons why the West has kind of, turned its back on Russia. And why the West no longer trusts Russia, right? And of course, these people will cope and pretend that they don't like anything Western and that they enjoy driving Chinese cars or whatever, okay? But very deep inside, they're basically crying for America's respect and acknowledgements. It is very real, and it's a big part of the psyche of a lot of Russians, in my opinion. And this scene essentially cements it in art form. And also, the fact that this entire sort of childish juvenile propaganda rants is delivered in a show that is fully based on a TV tradition that is fully copied from the West, with its kind of crude early noughts sitcom edgy comedy, it only makes it more amazing in my opinion, because they cannot even diss America and shit on America without literally using the tropes and the legacy of American art and American media culture. A lot of Z Russians essentially act like incels who get rejected by a girl and think that it's the girl's problem, and they decide to hate all women in response. I mean, you might think that this is kind of a trite observation, but in my opinion, it is deeply true. The average Z Russian is really quite insecure and also usually has an extreme persecution fetish and victim complex. And this is precisely why myself, as a Russian, I cannot partake in this kind of discourse or I cannot hold this worldview because it is just extremely dumb and childish.
НАТО расширяете, базы свои везде понатыкали. Улыбаетесь, гадите, улыбаетесь, гадите. И чё? Мы вообще запутались, если честно.
Okay, so this monologue is essentially just repeating propaganda talking points about the expansion of NATO and nuclear bases in Ukraine or whatever. Cool, once again guys, cool, very nice, very good to know.
Вот у нас цари были, империя зла. Коммунисты, тюрьма народ. Коммунистов, вашу мать! 100 лет в обед нет! Вам все равно все не так! Да что ж вам надо-то, ёпарасоте? Что вас в жопу целовали? Нет, не, брат. Тут уж извини, это, как говорится, fuck you.
Guys. Incredible. Just incredible. I mean, this rant here, this speech, is basically everything that I said it is. It is a tantrum of a child who cannot realize that his actions have consequences. Look, I'm not really sure. I don't really think that Americans want their ass kissed by Russians or whatever. I think you don't have to kiss America's ass to get their respects or something. I think not invading other countries maybe would be a good start. All I'm saying, right? But once again, this is really just how a lot of Russians feel and think, and I can definitely tell that even the actor who is delivering this message here is really feeling it too. In fact, I think this might be actually the only scene in the entire show where his acting is actually good. Maybe because he's not even acting. He's just delivering his usual butthurt Z Russian cope. You know? I mean, guys, who knows really? Maybe they didn't even write this scene. Maybe they were just like, короче, все, народ, заебало эту хуйню снимать, последний день съемок, блядь, сколько можно уже. Давайте, блядь, народ, последняя серия, все, последний кадр. Давай, спиздани ему там что-нибудь типа пиндосы, короче, и все, закругляемся уже, сколько можно, блядь, мотор. And this is basically how this entire scene came about, I think. But anyway, yeah, just wanted to show you guys this because it is like the most important moment in the entire show, I think, and I hate it. It also doesn't help that, like, the actor who's delivering this speech has, like, a terminal Stasa как просто face. You know what I'm saying? Stasa как просто is this Russian YouTuber turned, like, Russian propagandist. He's insane, but, they just have, like, the same physiognomy. Sharikov physiognomy, okay? I mean, I don't know, guys, whatever. This is, like, a reference that only 3 people are gonna guess. I fucking hate this actor. And this is pretty much how this entire show ends. Everything just ties up together in the most predictable way possible. Alexei, being the simple, generous Russian that he is, of course, forgives Biden no matter what and gives him some money out of the wedding pile so that he can go back to the US. The Secret Service agents come back to Russia with the fake Russian Biden, see the real Joe, and rescue him. The end scene of the show is kind of funny, I guess, because they actually managed to kind of tie in the show with real life. What happens is that the real Joe Biden, who has now returned to the US, is shown watching Russia Today once again for some reason in the White House. However, now having spent some time in Russia and becoming, you know, enamored with the Russian way of life, enamored with the Russian spirit, Biden ends up saying that he hates all of this, he hates everything that America stands for, and that he's actually done with all this shit and that he's gonna be not running for the presidency of America. Which once again obviously ties in into what happened in real life when Joe Biden dropped out of the presidential race and was replaced by Kamala Harris. So I can only assume that this probably was something that happened when they were wrapping up the filming of the show, and considering how this entire show is kind of late to the party as far as being relevant, this is not the worst way to end things. So I guess I give them some kudos for coming up with an ending that actually kind of like is interesting because it ties in into what actually happened in real life. So the real reason why Joe Biden drops out is because he spent a crazy week in Russia. And yeah, that's pretty much the end of this entire sitcom. And guys, what do I have to say? After submitting myself to, you know, 8 episodes of this, 8 episodes of pure cringe and, you know, just relentless Z torture, right? Quite honestly, even as shitty politics aside, I can say that this show is just a massive letdown. Like I said, it is very generic, it is very lukewarm, it is very one note, or should I say one joke, okay? And it really is not that original or exciting. I mean, once again, watching Dmitry Dyuzhev play Joe Biden is really entertaining for like the first 10 minutes or so, but then this exaggerated slowness and, you know, stupidness of Biden that they're showing off here, it just really starts being fucking annoying. Like, he's just way too slow. You just want him to get on with the fucking thing and stop acting like a dumbass. Sooner or later. And all the side characters apart from Biden himself, they're basically just very, very generic. They're all cliche characters that are basically stolen from other better Russian sitcoms and comedy shows. And the overall level of writing and humor of this show is just peak TNT TV channel slop, okay? In this show, we're essentially watching Joe Biden stumble his way through the worst post-Soviet Russian TV tropes and cliches, and honestly, he might as well have not been there, because like, the show just feels that insubstantial and sloppy. And the biggest problem, of course, with this show is that it is once again this mix of sort of TNT comedy normie humor garbage with All of these endless, awkwardly phoned in sudden appearances of Russian propaganda and like Russian propaganda preaching. So it just feels like you're watching some kind of insane Frankenstein. And when you're watching this, it just makes you feel like a schizo person, honestly. The show just feels super rushed, like everything was made in a hurry, like they barely tried, and like they basically tried to just put the show out while it was still relevant, while Biden was still in office, and while Biden was still running for presidency, and everybody was talking about his, him being unfit for office or whatever. But even with this, they were kind of late, so this show just fails at everything that it sets out to do. So what can I really say? It's definitely one of the shows of all time. It's definitely a show that was made, and in my opinion, later down the line, a few decades down the line, it could be actually used by historians of the future to document and sort of analyze and study the insanity of Russian propaganda during the time of the Ukraine war. And again, it just doesn't feel like a whole connected thing. It feels like this mix of bullshit, which is just an extended version of a shitty Russian propaganda TV ad or whatever, that is simply made with the intent to rage bait people and go viral, and just like a ton of the bullshit that Russia has been producing with its propaganda apparatus for the past 2 years, 3 years, it is really not going to age well. So, what do you guys think? Would you like to give this Goodbye TV show a watch? I do not recommend it. Because once again, after watching all the 8 episodes in a row, I feel like a part of my soul was also stolen. And I feel like I physically and spiritually became worse after watching this show. So yes, long story short, Dmitry Dyuzhev ruined my fucking life and I'm never going to forgive him for it. What else can I say other than that? I feel extremely embarrassed to be a citizen of a country that releases shit like this. And I really, really hope things will change, because otherwise, I don't know, this is pretty fucking bad, guys. If this is the future of Russian entertainment, we're not looking too good. Anyways, guys, I guess that is going to be pretty much it for this epic review of Goodbye, the Russian TV show making fun of Biden. Let me know what you guys think about all of this down in the comments below. And as always, guys, once again, if you did enjoy this video, then please make sure to slap the like on it. And also, if you guys would like to support me additionally, and that is financially, you can go over to the link down in the description and become a YouTube member. It is basically YouTube's own version of Patreon. It's the best way to support me. It's a monthly donation type of thing. Or you could also leave a super thanks underneath this video for a one-time donation. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Russia, Joe Biden, forever. I want to take my mind off of this shit now, so I am very glad that this is over and I no longer have to think about this show. See you guys in the next video. Peace.